What's up, investors? Thank you for watching the Chain Trends Crypto Podcast. Remember that this is not financial advice. The purposes of this content are for education and entertainment. I have a very special guest with me today, Kieran Warwick. He's the co-founder and CEO of a very exciting blockchain game called Alluvium. Kieran, thank you so much for joining me. Can we just start? Just tell me a little bit about your background and what led you to your current position.
Sure. So I basically started in crypto nearly 6 years ago now, and we were just talking offline. I'm a little bit of a degen as well, and so I got into Bitcoin first. Didn't really know much about it, but was pretty interested. I think my entry to Bitcoin was like 400 or 500, so it was pretty low down. But I just, knowing me, I was like, look, there's just not enough gains there, potential. Now, obviously, that's the stupidest thing in the world, thinking that, it would be 120x now. But I started looking at other projects that were building on alternate networks and chains. And I got into ETH, and I really liked ETH. I was super bullish on ETH. I bought in at like $6 or something like that. And I ended up I was just about to buy a house or at least put a deposit on a house. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm seeing ETH go like parabolic here. And so I pretty much put all my money plus leverage into ETH. And there was, of course, at that point, if you zoom out on the chart, you're talking the tiniest dip of all time.
Right.
And I lost a whole bunch of money. And so for me, my brother and I came from Synthetics Protocol, previously Haven, when he first started. We had an over-the-counter Bitcoin exchange in Australia, and it was probably one of the world's first over-the-counter Bitcoin exchanges. And so that gave me exposure along with the trading that I was doing into crypto. But after I got wrecked so hard on ETH, I started looking at other things. I ended up going into a food tech startup. Did that for probably 3 and a bit years. And then Kane's protocol got up to, I think its ranking was like 25 at one point, and it had like a $5 billion market cap or something like that. And I was driving along with him, and he was like, man, you just got to get over it. You got to get back into crypto. Like you're struggling with this food tech startup, which was fine. Like we had 200,000 people on it, and which fairly small when you're talking, what we were trying to achieve, but it just doesn't have the ability to scale like a crypto project does. And so I got back into it again, started investing. This is when it was basically the yield farming summer, and there was probably 70 projects that I went into over a 6-month period. Going from like 2 million market cap up to $1 billion market cap. So I didn't care what it was. If I thought I could farm some yield, I would get into it. And then I stumbled across GameFi in the likes of Axie Infinity, and I sort of it stopped me, and it was everything that, like, this real verifiable ownership of assets in a game was the first time that I'd ever experienced that or seen that in playing out in real time. And it just made me go back to like my MOBA days where I was playing like World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, League of Legends, and you don't own any of your assets. And so I'm the type of gamer that would play something, get heavily addicted for like 5 years or whatever, and then for whatever reason just completely get over the game. And when you are in that sort of situation, you've built up all these assets that are worth a ton of money to someone else who's coming into the game or perhaps just still playing the game themselves, but you can't do anything. And you can either like go, like it was like Bitcoin back in the day, like 10 years ago, where you can go out on the street and like give someone a whole bundle of cash and they'll promise to send you the Bitcoin. You're doing similar things like that with gaming for the last like 20, 30 years. And so I looked at that. I was fascinated by NFTs, and I decided, hey, what if we built a AAA style game like the games that I was just mentioning on the blockchain? And that's sort of how we got started.
Okay, great. Oh, that's really interesting, because one of the questions that I had for you was, why did you decide to build the game on a blockchain with a token opposed to going the traditional route? But you had already answered, is because you were already involved and you understood. And I really like that assessment, that, you know, how you said people kind of accumulate these assets through the life cycle of them playing the game, and then they have nothing to do with them, right? Like, what do you do with them? You're just over it, and it's like, this is a whole different world, you know? This is
100%. Completely permissionless. It's open market. You know, if you're not going to allow someone to sell your assets on your marketplace, OpenSea is definitely going to allow them to do that, and you know, 50 other platforms on the blockchain. So it's just something. It's a bit of a paradigm shift, and I think we're going to see mainstream gamers demand this across the board. I think we're very much still in the infancy of blockchain gaming, purely because these games take a long time to make, right? Like if you look at GTA, for example, you're talking like 8-year development cycle to get that last version out. And, you know, we're obviously not going for something as complex as that, but we're still going for AAA, which means, you know, you need super amounts of funding, you need top-notch graphics, like really next level graphics, and you know, story, gameplay, all of these elements need to fit in with each other in order to get that mark of AAA. And yeah, I think doing it on the blockchain, it's going to be the first time it's ever been done, and I'm really excited to see what people start doing, what gamers around the world start doing.
Yeah, this could be, I mean, I know, you know, not to talk about price or whatever, it's not, you know, but this could be huge, right? Like, I mean, this could be so big in terms of what could be done, you know, with peer-to-peer NFTs. You even have some DeFi aspects in the game, which I'm really interested in. I don't want to get into too much at once. I'll ask you about that a little bit later, but
yeah,
what just for the, you know, for clarity, how would you describe Alluvium? Like, what is Alluvium?
So Alluvium, it's an amalgamation of Pokemon and another game called Teamfight Tactics, which essentially, the easiest way to explain it is because everyone is aware of what Pokemon was and how it worked. It's this open world where you've got a number of different creatures that you're out there trying to capture. As you capture them, you put them into your team, and then you can start battling them. The biggest difference that we have between Pokemon and ourselves, Alluvium, is that we took that battle system and we used what is a fairly new genre in auto battling, and it's highly strategic. All of the strategy is done prior to the battle actually starting. And one of my co-founders was actually my brother, Aaron, who designed it. He's a very, very big fan of Teamfight Tactics, which is purely this auto battler that's, you know, you put down a bunch of characters. They need to have synergies together. The stronger the synergies that they have, the stronger your team. You also need to factor in countering your opponent's strategy and team, what they're putting down. And so it just, the typical battle components of Pokemon were just a little bit basic, and we wanted to make it a little bit more exciting. And so, you know, you can think of it exactly like that, where you've got these 7 different biomes that you can explore. they've all got extreme weather events. They're really, really cool looking places for you to go and explore. You've got 150 alluvials to collect, and you do so by going in and either battling the NPCs that are there, which is, you know, not the PvP component. And then you've got other battle modes where you can literally go in. We could have a battle. We could lay down and say, okay, after this AMA, let's see who's the best. We could put down 1 ETH if you wanted to, and the winner would receive the prize of that ETH. And so there's some cool components where we've sort of sprinkled in some DeFi aspects and definitely some degenerate trading stuff in there as well.
Right. Now is this kid friendly, child friendly? Like what age range are we as your target demographic?
Look, I mean, is trading crypto kid friendly at all, right? Like not really, but you see, you know, 16-year-olds on Twitter, massive followings. I forget what that guy's name is, but he's like one of those kid geniuses. And it's like, is his mum and dad letting him trade crypto? Like, does he live by himself now because he's got so much cash? Like, I don't really know. We're not going to put an age limit on it, but there may be things like the gambling side of it, being able to bet ETH is where we think there may be some regulations that come in. But certainly being a fully decentralized protocol, we're a DAO, right? There's no regulation on DAOs right now, and it's obviously it's coming, and there's been a lot of talks about it for a long time, but we're sort of skating in this gray area, which as soon, because it is gaming and we're talking about bringing in tens of millions of players, we need to be a little bit more careful than what, you know, your typical decentralized protocol has to be. Because it's all, you know, you're talking, we've got things like servers run by AWS, whereas a completely permissionless blockchain or DeFi protocol that is fully decentralized and run by immutable contracts, that's you can't stop that, right? Whereas if AWS jump in and they say, hey, you know, you've got essentially gambling in your game, and there's children that can be doing this, which, you know, I don't think there will be, but, you know, we need to be a little bit wary of it, definitely.
Right. And that goes for like the whole, you know, play to earn, you know, category, right? You know, what age too? Like, 'cause I was wondering, like, when I was a kid growing up, we were talking about it a little earlier before we went on the air, but when I was a kid, you know, there was no way to make a living really playing video games. So it kind of was like, I grew up in a household where my father would more or less, my mother would be like, hey, you're wasting your time. Like, go outside and play. Right.
Yeah.
We're totally away from that now. It's like between streaming and play to earn, like you could make a very good living playing video games.
Yeah, and I guess, look, esports is touched on this. If you look at some of the players in those competitions, they're super young. They're winning millions of dollars of prize money, and I guess this is the next step, right? Like, this is play to earn. How are you going to police a kid who's 15 years old in the Philippines who gets out his mobile phone and starts playing Axie Infinity, and instead of him, you know, earning $2 a day doing his chores for his mum and dad, he's now earning $20 a day, and all of a sudden he's like the breadwinner in the house, right? Like, what do you know? And obviously it's less apparent in North America and like China and places like that, where, you know, the income there for the average person is a lot higher, but it's still for a 16-year-old earning $20 a day. Like, put yourself back in that mindset. I had the exact same thing. Mum and dad sitting there going, get off the computer. You need to get outside. We come from a tennis background where we all were tennis players. Our dad was a tennis pro. And so he luckily believed in the power of computers and the internet and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, he was also conflicted, like, you're not gaming. Like, you can do research, you can learn things, educate yourselves, but gaming is the devil. So,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, and it's really interesting. That paradigm shift is really interesting. And up to this point, you mentioned Axie Infinity. That's kind of I guess where the bar is right now. Now, I don't know if anybody has actually looked at Axie Infinity or tried to play Axie Infinity, but it's kind of like Atari or Nintendo type graphics, pretty much. So that's kind of where the space is at right now, like pretty much Nintendo. But when I look at Alluvium and what Alluvium's doing, some of the trailers and stuff, I mean, this is a very big leap forward in terms of graphics. And I can't speak to the gameplay because I haven't played. It's not out yet. But it's a pretty big step. Can you talk a little bit about what went into, the development and how long this process kind of has taken?
Yeah, so the other co-founder that is in the DAO and he was anonymous up until about 2 weeks ago, so it's still a little bit weird, is our other brother. His name is Grant Warwick, and he's been in CGI for the past 20 years, something like that. He's pretty young like me, but he started when he was 13 or 14 years old, and his background comes from the print industry. And so he's worked for very, very large companies, Pepsi, a whole bunch of different car companies like Toyota and Honda and all these massive companies where they're trying to make the most realistic CGI they possibly can, to the point where, like, you're looking at some of these images and you think it's a real car that's there, but it's not, it's CGI. And so his background is in making things really, really photorealistic. And so but at the same time, he grew up with me playing Pokemon. And so we wanted to go for this semi-realistic, but still stylized graphics. And so you get that psychology of collecting still, like you still think it's a creature. It's not like a super photorealistic monster that you're looking at. It's a cute, and then it turns, like, as they fuse, they go up into adolescent stage, and then they go into their final stage. But we keep this stylized graphics the whole way through, where you still feel like it's not too edgy and you want to collect it, but it's still amazing graphics, right? Like the biggest thing that we have going for us right now compared to other blockchain projects is gaming projects is the graphics. And he is relentless, and because he's had the ability to network with all these different CGI artists. Like, at one point he had his own tutorial business called Mastering CGI, which essentially gave him this network and this name for himself, where he was able to start going to people that were working in literally like AAA studios and saying, hey, we've only got 10 people over here. My brother's a little crazy. He thinks that this can be like some sort of $10 billion venture or whatever. And this is back when we were worth like 10 million, like nothing. And so it's very hard to bring people from AAA studios into crypto, because they're like, oh, it's a bit taboo. It's like scammy. Like, I don't understand it. And these are guys at the top of their industry. They're not just going to drop working for Riot or Blizzard or Ubisoft to come to this super early stage startup. But when they saw Grant, and they were like, okay, if you're doing it, like, and it took me weeks to convince Grant. Grant was like, this is a scam, 100%. Like, I'm not doing this. That's why he didn't put his name to it in the first place.
Right.
And so he was able to go out and recruit probably 10 to 15 artists very, very quickly that are like top of the industry. And I think that's what's allowed us, like we've got 150 people in the team now, which is a huge, huge team when you look at other blockchain games. But having him as the anchor point to say, well, if he's doing it, if he's putting his name to it, and he thinks that we can build a game with the graphics quality that he's looking for, then yeah, I'll give it a shot. I'll come over. And now every single one of those artists with the tokens that we've given them is worth a stupid amount of money.
Right, yeah.
And so they're going nowhere, right? Like their retention that we have is huge because I've got like 10, 20 years worth of wages in tokens.
Right.
You know, so that's why you're seeing the graphics like it is, because we've just got a ridiculously good art team. Like they're insane.
So you said about 150 members are on your team. Wow, it's a and the market cap for Alluvium's what, in the 700 million range right now?
Yeah, so if you're looking at, I think fully diluted is some crazy amount, like 11 billion or something, and I think the circulating is somewhere around 700.
700, right?
We had
right.
a pretty big drop last night, which wasn't very nice, but.
And you're pre-launch, right? Like the game's not available yet. It's coming out in the quarter one of next year. Is that yeah? So now the token. What's the separation between the token and the actual product for clarity, right? Like, because if I look at that token, I see a $1,200 token. Like, how do I play the game, right? Like, I don't have to buy it, right? so can you differentiate the token and the product a little bit?
Sure. So that's sort of where the DeFi elements come into it. And the ILV token is a governance token that governs the entire Alluvium studio. And so the Alluvium studio might be made. Our first self-titled game is Alluvium that's coming out. We're building a team of probably, I'll be happy when we're around 750 to 1,000 people in the DAO. That's when I think we can really start creating a bunch of AAA games. But one token governs the entire thing. And the way that we set up the tokenomics is it has two use cases, this governance token. First one, obviously, very obvious, is the fact that it governs the protocol. And so what we did very, very early on is we airdropped. We had a pretty big community. We given that we're brothers with the founder of Synthetics protocol, we got 6,000 or 7,000 people from Synthetics to come over, and we had about 10,000 ourselves. And before our TGE, we airdropped this token called pre-ILV, which is supposed to convert over into ILV. And we did that so we could establish a council of essentially governors. So there's 5 of them in our case, and they were put in place before even the token was the real ILV token was launched. And essentially the governance, what the token holders do is they vote in every 3 months. There's a new epoch, and they vote in the 5 people that they think are best to make the decisions on behalf of the protocol, right? And so we have a mix of community members, some moderators, some DeFi founders. We've had Santiago and Anton from 1inch. They've been council members. But we've had this very eclectic group that govern the protocol, which has been really, really good. And so it's similar to what Ethereum does with their EIPs, the improvement proposals and the configuration change proposals, where let's say our marketplace, once we launch that, that's going to have a 5% fee. The community might say, hey, a community member might have a proposal and say, hey, Axie Infinity's at 4.5%. I think we need to reduce ours down to 4.5. Here's my proposal. That it needs to have a rationale. It needs to be well thought out, well written. That then gets presented to the council, and the council will deliberate on that proposal. They have, off the line meetings, and they basically come back to the community and say, we have voted yes or no, and here's our rationale for doing so. And we've probably had 15 proposals across the board, a couple of configuration changes, a couple of just pure improvement proposals. And the governance, it's pretty scary when you think about us as founders. We're sitting here and we're giving essentially all the power over to the community, and whatever they want to do from here on out. If they said, hey, we don't actually like the Alluvium, the genres that you're going into, we want a shooter, right? Like, give us Medal of Honor. Like, where's that? We would theoretically, and there are provisions in place where the PDAO can step in and say, look, there's some nefarious actors here. This is going to derail every bit of the whole reason everyone's here. But by far and large, we've had a really, really good response from these proposals. 99% of the time, they have done exactly what they're intended to do, which is improve the project as a whole. And so that's one section of what the ILV token does. So you might not be a council member, but every 3 months, if you hold that token, you're able to vote in one of those council members, which is essentially someone who's acting on your behalf because you don't have the time or whatever. And so that's one half of it. The other half, which is where it gets very interesting, is we're the first game to distribute 100% of profits and revenues back to staked token holders. So what that means is if you own the ILV token and you stake it, and the way that we've set up the tokenomics, there's absolutely no reason. There's single-sided staking, which doesn't cost you anything but a little bit of gas. And so you're earning something like a 80% APY on that single-sided. So there's really no reason why you shouldn't, if you have a token, have it staked. There's obviously there's an SLP pool, which has something like 300, 400% APY, which is subject to impermanent loss. So a little bit more risky, I guess. But either way, whether you choose the risky pool or the zero risk pool, you should be staked if you have an ILV token. And what that grants you is anytime we have a revenue event, whether that be the land sale that's coming up, Alluvium, which is coming up, which is, again, it's very similar to like your CryptoPunks, but just alluvials. And then the main thing, all of the in-game revenues, all of it goes inside a vault, and every now and again, that vault will go and purchase ILV off the market. So you get this nice up, because let's say we accumulate, 10 million or 100 million in in-game revenues from our millions of players each week. That will then be used, all of that ETH, which is our in-game currency, will be, so to answer your question, you don't need the ILV token to play the game. You can just use ETH. When we purchase that ILV off the market, you get this huge up. And then we take that ILV and we distribute it proportionately based on how much you have staked in the protocol. Okay. Yeah. So it's a little bit confusing and it's a little bit complex, but essentially we're giving 100% of revenues back to the people who are staked in the protocol, regardless of where that revenue comes from.
Wow, that's remarkable, really. So this project, you said we could use ETH in the ecosystem or to pay whatever, but it's built on Immutable X.
Yes.
which is an Ethereum layer 2.
Correct.
Correct. Yep. That was obviously for gas prices. The GUI was a little too high on the ETH side. So there's no difference at all. But my question is because it's built on Immutable X, is there interoperability with other blockchains, or is this exclusive to the Ethereum ecosystem?
So over time, I think so. Right now, it's a bit of a challenge, right? You can always take your assets from Immutable and bring them back to layer 1, and then that's when the assets become interoperable in terms of any other gaming project that's built on Ethereum. You can technically use those assets if we have them set up in that way. And we get asked this question a lot, interoperability for different games. Is it something that we're even keen on?
Yeah.
And yes, it is, because it's a cool thing. Like if I go and get a weapon in Star Atlas and I want to be able to bring that into Alluvium, I don't need to buy another piece of equipment. I don't need to spend more money. And it's cool because it's like, hey, that's a Star Atlas sword that you're using, but it's as much as as amazing as it sounds, it's very, very hard to implement. And the collaboration that you need in order to literally, you need to be building that asset in partnership with that game. And I'm not saying that it's not possible, but there's so much to be done now for games like a Star Atlas, and there's a bunch of other ones that are building that are going for AAA quality. Our first protocol is to literally build these games, right? Like that's what we're focusing on.
Right.
For us to turn around and start going, okay, it would be a little bit of a gimmick right now. And what we're more so looking at is when we build our second title, third title, fourth title, because all of the IP is owned by us, the same artists are working on it, the same type of assets, it's much easier to get interoperability between our own games. Like, I think that's where people are going to go for the first step of a studio full of games that you can, have these assets that are interchangeable. As soon as you start broadening that and going out to I can use this in 10 different games, it's like, okay, well, you can't. You need to have that collaboration and partnership prior to being able to do that. So yes, Immutable does put up a little bit of a blocker there, in that if they're not also on Immutable, then you're going to have to port them off back to layer 1. But there's even bigger issues in terms of interoperability before we start looking at that.
Yeah, I was just curious because, like you alluded to, that if that was even something that you wanted to do or were interested in, because it's not necessary, and it is still so early. Like, so much has to happen to get to that point. Still,
yeah. I'm pretty realistic. I'd love to sit here and go, yeah, it's amazing. We're all going to have potions and guns and weapons that are all fit into everyone's style of game. But there's so many complications that we need to get over. And I'm definitely not ruling it out, but I'm thinking you're more 5-10 year horizon for that type of stuff.
Now, how do I play when the game comes out? Is it going to be a mobile app? Is it going to be a desktop game?
This is a bit of a contentious one. We decided to go out with desktop and Mac only to start off with. Building, obviously, again, touching on a AAA game, the amount of resources you need, the amount of time, money, it's a huge prospect to go into it. When tacking on mobile as well, it just takes it to another level. And one thing that I've been discussing with the council over the past 3 or 4 weeks is, and we've started talking to a few VCs, is us going out and raising our Series A. we're looking to, we obviously, again, we need to get council approval on this, and they're pretty bullish on us doing this. And the reason is the play to earn aspect of crypto gaming right now is almost exclusively on mobile. And if you think of the reasons of why that would be, it's mainly developing nations that are really tapping into the play to earn side. Again, you tell a North American guy, hey, don't go to work and earn your $500 that you're going to get today and play a game and you'll earn $25. Right. Yes, he would rather play games, but he's got to make a living, you know. Right. So it's less apparent. But also in developing nations, they don't necessarily have access, or certainly not like the Western nations out there with desktops. And so it's a huge barrier to entry. They can go and buy an Android phone for $30, but a desktop, you're looking at minimum $400, $500, whether it be a laptop or a desktop computer. And over the past couple of years with COVID, there's been heavy production restrictions on a lot of these hardware companies. And so the likelihood of you getting a desktop in these developing nations for a price where you can actually make money playing a game is right. very, very low. And so we are going to, it's my plan to go out and do a huge raise, go and get a massive amount of mobile developers so we can bring forward that date, because it was originally going to be, you know, early next year. But sorry, not early next year, as in early 2023. And we with play to earn gaining so much momentum like it is, we really, and obviously guilds can help with that because they can provide hardware and stuff like that. But we really don't want to hamstring ourselves and not have the ability to give access to people who only have mobile phones. So it's something, I haven't actually spoken about this with anyone publicly, but yeah, it's something that we're looking to do very, very soon.
Awesome. That's an exclusive then, huh?
There it is. Yeah.
So now just now those numbers, is that like a hypothetical number, or is that pretty much what people are getting right now when they're playing these play to earn games? Is that basically the yield, like $20, $25 a day?
Yeah, it's basically the yield. And look, we're set to give out something to the tune of $1.1 billion in yield. And, you know, how much what that average is, you know, obviously if you're a better player in Axie, you're going to earn more SLP, you're going to earn more of dollars, right? At the end of the day. But these numbers that I'm putting out are averages, and obviously it depends on the volatility of what the SLP price is. But as a general rule, I think that these games are going to be, on average, making you something like $20 to $50 a day, depending on how new they are. But then you've also got this, you know, like the amount of in-game yield that we have is finite, right? So we've got 1 million tokens that we're set to give out. That's over a 3-year distribution period. We're already looking at things like once play to earn runs out, is that it? You know, is it just now you play for fun? And obviously the council has a bunch of ideas on this, and I really like where their heads are at in terms of how we can keep play to earn inside the game forever, but not necessarily, you know, at the same rate as what it will be when the gates open. That's going to be, it's very similar to staking, right? If you get into staking super early in a good project, you're going to make a shit ton of yield. If you get in later, there's still yield there, but it's not as much. That's going to be similar to us.
Right. Now, as far as staking, with the Alluvium token, what are some of the what are the options that I have? Like, do I have to enter a pair, like with USDC or ETH? Can I stake any other tokens? Why? Yeah. I mean, would I want to? I mean, what is the staking like?
Yeah, so we went with a pretty simplistic model in terms of how many pools we have. There's one thing that we didn't want to do when you're onboarding mainstream or normies, whatever you want to call them. I just didn't want to confuse them with a ton of options. And so the first option is just your single-sided ILV staking. You buy an ILV token, you stake it. You have a couple of options there. You can stake it for up to 12 months, and that will give you 2 times the multiplier on how much yield you earn. So I think it's like something. I'm in the SLP pool, of course, because that's the more degen pool. But so I'm not 100% up with the APYs, but I think it's around 40%. And then if you lock it up for 12 months, then you're going to earn double that. So around 80% for single-sided staking. And you've got the ETH ILV pool. We ended up seeding that on SushiSwap. Really big fans of what they're doing, and it's been a really good platform for us to launch that pair. And I think the APY is sitting around 350 at the moment. That's if you're again you're locking up your yield for 12 months or your stake for 12 months. But where it gets interesting is we use the synthetics model where your rewards are escrowed for 12 months. And so there hasn't been that we've only had something like 650,000 circulating tokens. And in a normal protocol, you would have way more circulating tokens hitting the market purely based on the rewards. But because we've escrowed them for 12 months, you're not able to sell them, right? And so it's kept the APYs really high. It's kept the amount of distribution that people are getting high. And yeah, I think that has been a pretty smart move to do that, because it's human nature, right? And like, people are their own worst enemy. I know myself, I staked in there like 450K very early on, like back when the token price was like $60 or $70, something like that. Had you give me $10 million sitting there that's available to me, I'm like, Jesus, like, it's like the old like, when you buy in at Bitcoin, you bought it at $100. Are you really going to be still holding at 60K? Like, but if you don't give people the option and they're escrowed, then you're watching it. And I guarantee you, people that would have been like, well, I'm 4x up, now they're 20x up, and they're sitting there and they're like, well, I'm glad I couldn't sell it because, I'm so much more in profit. And so I think it's just been a good thing all around having this escrowed yield or escrowed rewards system. But the last thing that we offered, which was more like a marketing ploy to try and get a bunch of different DeFi protocols to stake their tokens into our protocol. And so we offered these flash pools, and we still have them going at the moment. And they basically mean you can take I think we've had Sushi, we've had Chainlink, we've had Bond token. Sorry, not Bond. We've had XYZ and a couple of other synthetics where you can, if you're just sitting on a bunch of tokens, we allowed you to come into our flash pools, stake them, obviously much lower APY than the other two pools, but gives you exposure. And then all of a sudden you've got this ILV that's sitting in your wallet. And the idea was, back when people were farming, 2-3 ILV a day because they've chucked in, 50K worth of Chainlink or whatever. They're like, oh, I've made $200. Like, I'll just keep it there. It's just sitting in this ILV. Over the last 12 months, that ILV is now turned into 2, 3, 4 grand. And what I was trying to invoke or get the attention of these people is, that was just meant to be some crumbs in my wallet. And now all of a sudden that's a substantial amount of money. Maybe I should actually pay attention to what ILV is in the first place, because these guys are coming from, very opaque, complex protocols. They're not necessarily looking to start gaming, but yield, right? So
Right. Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at with the flash pools.
As you were talking, it struck me, and a realization is like we're at a point in time where video games or games are paying better yield than banks, right? It's crazy times,
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, anything in crypto is just
crazy. Yeah, and that's one part of it too, but that's also a knock on the bank, like the banking is just so outdated, and so many upgrades to be needed. Can I ask you? And you don't have to answer this one because it's a little bit. But when you were talking, I started wondering. Well, with all this yield and the staking, and it seems like a lot of you said the revenue goes back to the community and the stakers. I'm assuming, you got to try to make money somewhere, somehow. How does Alluvium make money?
Right. So that's the interesting question. So
yeah. You don't have to share, and you don't have to share that. Some people, if you have a creative way, that's
no. It's totally fine. So essentially, the treasury, which is the DAO, which is owned by all of the token holders, is staking as well. And so they don't. When the treasury can't stake for any rewards and yield, because it would be zero, like it's a moot point, right? It doesn't need more yield, it doesn't need more ILV, it needs to distribute more ILV. But it basically, the original amount that the treasury had stakes, which is about sitting at something like 12.5%, because there's obviously little things like the raise that we're talking about, that's got to come out of the treasury. There's been team members that have tokens that come out of the treasury, things like that. But the treasury is staked as well. So when we're talking about people curing shards, which is what is required for you to capture these alluvials, there's a small fee there. There's a small fee when you travel, if you buy skins, enhancements, weapons, crafting, like all of these things in game have a price to them. And it all goes into that vault, and then the treasury, because it's staking 12% of those tokens, it's going to get 12% of the revenue back. And what it does with that money is essentially power the studio, right? The team that's behind it. When you've got, we've got 150 now, but when we've got 1,000 people, you're exactly right. It's kind of like, okay, this is an amazing system. You're giving all the money back to the people, but how do you stay afloat?
Yeah.
That's exactly how we do it, right? We now, that's not a centralized entity, that DAO, right? That is made up of all the token holders. They're the ones who control that treasury and decide what it does, what it pays for things, like all of that. And yes, a lot of that right now is controlled by core contributors. But as time goes on, it's very likely that that's going to expand and, have 15, 20, 30, maybe even 50 people that control that multi-sig, which is the treasury. And so, yeah, that's the system and how we can actually, pay core contributors and have listing fees, marketing dollars, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's in the representation of gaming, but as far as the DAO goes, when you're operating a DAO, that same formula could be applied no matter what the DAO is, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's really thank you for answering that. Now I know, I guess, how DAOs can be profitable, which I think is important for the long-term health of any projects. Like at the end of the day, right? Like these things fly all over the place, but to sustain and stay and have success over a period of time, you got to make money, right? So yeah, so
you got to make money.
Yeah.
but I guess the caveat there is that the money can be applied any way that the DAO sees fit, and the DAO is the community. So again, once like I'm a token holder. There's thousands of other token holders. We all decide what does that multi-sig use that money for, and how does it actually work? And so but we're talking again bleeding edge. Like it's certainly never been done for a gaming studio, but we're even touching on like different methods of how DAOs stay profitable and how they generate revenue in terms of DeFi protocols as themselves. So it's like what this progresses into, I don't even know yet.
Yeah, because
so
this is like it's a first of its kind. It's like nothing's been like this. I don't for crypto gaming, or now that or in terms of DAOs, like at least that I could think of off the top of my head. I mean, right now,
obviously there's things like trading protocol revenues that come through and things like that. If you're seeding pools but like in terms of you're talking about external capital coming in. People are spending ETH inside our game that they might have converted from just general dollars, and that is going into this vault. It's being used inside a game, which would typically go to a centralized entity. You're talking the skins in Fortnite, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. It's all going to a centralized entity. So this has well and truly not been done before in GameFi, but I'm slightly out of touch now in terms of other protocols. I used to be really, really up with a lot of different DeFi protocols out there. But yeah, I'm super excited just to see what happens here. Like, yeah.
Just another thing too. Like when you're talking, is something possible on the lines? Because you described Alluvium. This is where we're at right now. There could be future games, different games, right, or ecosystems, or in the future. Can there be kind of like how Fortnite does these partnerships with like Marvel, let's say, and then they bring the superheroes in with skins? Is Illuvium have ability like that potentially in the future?
100%. So
awesome. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, definitely. So there's things like partnerships. That's where I get really excited about, and like we've had some crazy big people reach out to us. Like I don't want to drop their names in on here because we're still talking to them and we're working out different partnerships. But I've had multiple artists reach out to us, and I'm talking like real artists. And it's just like you get a DM from their manager, and you're like, what? Are you actually talking about my game? Like, what is going on here? And so one thing that we haven't spoken about is we're launching a mini game slightly before the main game launches. And that mini game is surrounded by a land sale, which a lot of you probably heard a lot of projects do. They sell this land.
Yep.
Ours has a use case, and it's interconnected with the Alluvium game itself. And we probably need another hour to go into that. But the reason I mention that is the tier 5 land, there's only 7 of them, and they each hold a stadium. And so if you own that land, you actually own that stadium as well, which comes with, if you think about all the different brand rights that you could do, you can sell that stadium. Like I'm thinking Super Bowl-esque type events where we put on the largest esports prize pool ever, where we put like 50 million down into this tournament, and the people that own the stadiums, we could go with something like you can have things like commentators that are very, very famous people out there that have already intimated to us that they're keen to do something like that. You can run concerts like the Travis Scott thing that they did.
Yeah.
All of these different things. And the crazy part is if you own that tier 5 land, then you get a percentage of those revenues because it's on your land. right? You're holding the concert, you're holding the esports tournament. So all of that advertising revenue that comes in, all of the different partnerships are possible in this. On the flip side of that, in terms of like Alluvium, things like Marvel and different franchises out there that might want to come to us and say, hey, let's do a skin pack of alluvials. 100% we can do that.
That's
and
incredible. Yeah.
Again, when we do that and we go out and and like usually in a centralized entity, what's going to happen is they're going to make a shit ton of money and it's going to go all back to that centralized entity. But with us, it's going all back to the players.
Right.
So we're keen to do as many of these partnerships as possible. Obviously, you can't go too crazy with it, but we're always looking to align ourselves with really big brands to do things like that.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I don't own any Illuvium yet. I've been looking, studying. Now that I got to talk to you, what you just said about the land. When is the land sale? That was something I'd really love to be a part of once that's available. When is that coming?
So it was pegged to be around. It's going to finish. The build is going to finish around the 15th of December. It's just not the right time to launch something though. So we're probably looking at like very, very early January now.
Very early next year. And Q1, the game is set to launch. Does that mean like by March, sometime before March? You're assuming
it'll probably be in March.
Probably be in March. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Maybe Feb, but probably March.
I don't have any more questions. But if you got anything that you want to say before we wrap it up, thank you so much for doing this. It was a great interview. Had a blast.
No worries. So did I. Yeah, it's interesting. I talk to a lot of gaming streamers now that are interviewing a bunch of co-founders and founders of projects. It's good to get back in with some of the OG Bitcoin and DeFi native people to get in and talk about Alluvium, because I think people forget how much certainly from what I put into it myself, there's so many aspects of DeFi that we've integrated. When we talk GameFi, like we really, really mean GameFi in Alluvium. And so, yeah, it's just been good to talk about, I guess, more of the DeFi aspects of Alluvium. And I'd be more than happy to come on any other time that you see fit. And, we can talk about the land sale or Illuvitas or whatever.
Please, yeah, I'm gonna take you up on that. I'm definitely gonna reach out to you. What an incredibly exciting project. If you're still watching, thank you so much. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more content like this, and remember that this is not financial advice. Purposes of this content are for education and entertainment. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, Mark.